I made you the host, so
That is
I'll just
wrong. Getting ready to remove somebody else. All right.
you want me to do it.
I got it.
All right, there we go. Perfect. All right, so today's webinar is how you can turn $99 into 10K. So beginner's guide to wholesaling real estate. Um, Clint's going to be presenting most of the time today. I'll jump in and go through a couple of things as well. Clint, you want to go ahead and kick us off?
Yeah, me. Share my screen real quick. All right, we good? Colin, you can see it.
Yep, it is. Oh, you're jumping ahead.
Yeah. Cool.
Google Slides is always a little touchy.
What's that?
Google Slides is always a little touchy.
Yeah, it's sensitive. All right, cool. Well, like Colin said, I'm just going to break down essentially the most cost-effective way to get into wholesaling. Um, and then from there, right, you get that deal, and then you can fund some other methods. But so today we're covering basically wholesaling, what it is and isn't, how to find the deals, and then ultimately we're going to break down one of the deals we've done on here. And then from there, we'll provide the tools, the scripts, strategies, and then have a moment for some Q&A and go from there. So a little bit about us. So Colin, who I actually has mentored me for over a year now and taught me everything I know about real estate, has multiple exits, has analyzed quite a few deals, did 40 deals last year, doing 90 this year. For those not familiar, that is really, really high volume, especially, your second year into real estate. And myself, I've been in a lot of startups, started and sold one business, helped people launch others, was previously in real estate, not long after the financial crisis. But in my go in wholesaling, we were able to do nearly $1 million in sales in the first 90 days, leading to 90K in assignment fees. This was all done virtually. I'd never been in any of these cities. And then right now I'm focused on scaling up to get to consistent 100K months.
And for those that don't know about wholesaling, don't know like is that good, is it not? 90K in assignments in your first 90 days is really good. Is really good. Sometimes it takes people 60, 90 days just to get their first deal. But to do several deals within 90 days, closed and funded, for 90K is really incredible.
Yeah, I will say I went really hard in the paint because I quit my job with 2 months from runway. So I kind of had to do, I don't know if I'd recommend it, but that's what I had to do. All right, so wholesaling, why it works. So you do not need a license or any experience. Even in states you may hear like, oh, you got to have a license. You don't. There's, we won't get into the details here, but there's, double closes, ways around it. And the states I focus in are friendly states. Um, don't need any credit, don't need any money. Any money you would use would be if you just want to fund, additional marketing, if you don't want to do the cold calling yourself. And then ultimately the upside is really high and just that fast cash cycle, right? When you're doing a flip, it can take 4 or 5, 6 months to get it. With these, once you get it under contract, you typically sell it within 30 days. So
And
it is the number one entry point of people getting into real estate. Most get into wholesaling to build up their cash flow, to then do flips or then do the BRRRR method and build out their rental portfolio, which is essentially the path that I'm on right now.
and just to add to that too is like if you're just thinking about real estate, like wholesaling is a great place to start for all of the reasons that Clint mentioned. Um, and it has the least amount of risk or the lowest barrier to entry. And the reason that I like, well, even if you have money, Like even if you have money to go buy flips or you have money to go buy rentals or do the Burr method, which is really not what we're here to talk about today. Although we did cover virtual flipping in our last webinar last week, if you missed that one. Um, but it's an easy way to get a lot of reps in because the skills that you learn through wholesaling are essential foundation for anything that you do in real estate. Finding good discounted deals, analyzing numbers, knowing rehab budgets, all of those skills you will acquire through wholesaling real estate, which can then build the foundation to anything else that you want to do in real estate specifically.
Yeah, that's a great point. So when if you get into flipping or the burr, like, the number one thing in all of real estate is buying it right. No matter what method you're doing it, is buying it right. And so I've now analyzed, I mean, just so many houses, so many things. So my knowledge and understanding what is a deal and what isn't is outside of the money is a huge asset just from doing it. So quite simply, what is wholesaling? You're just going out there and trying to get a house at a great price, get it under contract, then you find the buyer and you just simply assign the contract. You're never putting any money up. In some cases, you may do like $100 earnest money. I've done a lot where I haven't even had to do that because I have a buyer that, goes ahead and funds that for me. Um, and so right here, the visual, it's very simple. Distressed seller, so somebody who is motivated to sell. There's a variety of reasons why they might not want to list. Um, that aside, you get that motivated seller, get it under contract, find a cash buyer, assign it, and title company handles all the legwork on that. They wire the money, and then bam, it just gets right to you.
And so you're not actually closing on the property. All you're doing is getting, I guess an easy way to put it is like you're the middleman, right? So you're finding a seller that wants to sell. Typically, that's going to be somebody that has some level of motivation, or the house is maybe in bad shape and they can't list it, or maybe they need to sell quickly. There's a number of reasons. We'll go into some of that a little bit further on in the webinar. And then you're finding a flipper or somebody who wants to buy rentals, and you're assigning the rights to that contract for a higher price than what you put it under contract. And so, like Clint said, all that paperwork gets handled at the title company. So you have a purchase agreement between you and the seller. That goes to the title company. Title company is going to run title, handle all the paperwork, all of that. You have an assignment of contract where you assign the rights to that contract to your buyer. That then goes to the title company. So then the title company is then going on to closing day. They're going to receive funds from the buyer, the end buyer, the buyer that you found, and they're going to give the money to the seller, and then they're going to give that profit to you. So some people call it like flipping paper, whatever the case is. You're never closing on the property, so it does minimize the risk for you, and there's lots of upside.
Yep. So here's a
Um,
breakdown of an actual deal. You want me to go into it, Colin, or you want to go in
yeah,
this
go
one?
for it.
Yeah, okay, cool. So this was actually Colin's first deal, this beautiful house as you can see right there. My God, isn't that thing ugly? Um, so so you see the property's worth 100,000 ARV. So ARV is after repair value. So that is once it doesn't look like a shithole like that and it's cleaned up, ready for someone to sell or have a renter come in, the market value would be 100 grand. And so Colin got it under contract for 14,000. That's right. When you get it under contract, you're estimating repairs. So you got to factor in, okay, about what's the ARV, what would the repairs be? And you work backwards, and we provide the calculators for this. You work backwards to then see what can what offer makes sense. So got it under contract for 14 grand. And I don't think he had high hopes at first, as this was his very first wholesale deal, but ultimately had multiple contractors go out there at once, which is a great strategy to kind of get a little competition going. Um, and somebody that said no came back and wanted it, and he was able to assign it for or sell it for 38 grand. So he made $24,000 profit, didn't put a penny in for renovation, didn't put any money in up front, just 24K.
Yeah. And it's funny, when we were putting this together, I actually hadn't really seen what the person did with the property. Um, but man, this property was in bad shape. Like sometimes sellers are not always honest to you about the condition of the property. And at this point, like this is my first wholesale deal, so I didn't experience that a lot. But like for example, they say, "Oh yeah, it's in great condition," and then you go and like ceiling's falling down, or it's just crazy stuff going on, or it's full of stuff, or all of the above. Um, so the thing with this one was the person had told me it was a two-bedroom house, and come to find out after my buyers had walked the property, it's a one-bedroom house, and I'm just like, who in their right mind is going to want a one-bedroom house? So I really did not think that I was going to sell this property. But yes, we assigned this for $38,000, made 24,000 in profit. And then I actually looked up what they actually did to the property. It's like pretty incredible what the property looks like now in comparison to what it looked like before.
Yeah. And one thing I'll add, people who talk about wanting to get in real estate and some are like, are you going to get your realtor's license? Like, hell no. Because even if I was a realtor and sold this for 38K, my 3%, right, is 11, a little over $1,100 before my broker gets a cut. And so no license, none of that. And, 24K lick on a 38K house. And I just did I just, had a $35,000 house, or I got for 35 and sold it for 55. I did work with the realtor on the buyer's end. His cut was like it was so low. I was like, oh my God, I would never be a realtor, at least in this price point. So um that aside, so here's basically the starter kit that we recommend. And kind of like, so I will add, Colin, before you jump in, we have used every tool on the market, from the old school to the latest stuff. To if you already been researching real estate, every wholesale guru, everyone you've seen on the other platforms, TikTok, YouTube, we have literally gone through the gamut and tried all of them. And so this is, you know, knowing what we know now, and if you have a limited budget, this is where we would start. Um, and then Colin, I don't know if you were wanting to run through any of Deal Machine right now
Yeah.
or
Yeah. I'm gonna. So this is kind of the. I mean, this is why everybody came to show up today, right? So everybody wants to know how the heck am I gonna spend $99 and make 10 grand? And like 10 grand is a conservative estimate in like a good Midwest market where you can make you can get a house for 20 grand and sign it for 30. You can get a house for 50 grand and sell it for 60, so on. Whatever the case is, like 10,000 is very doable on your first deal. Like I made 24 on my first. Flint, how much did you make on your first deal? I think it was like 30 something.
it was actually 55. Okay.
So Clint made $55,000 on his first wholesale deal. Now that was in what market?
I don't know if I want to
Oh yeah, it
tell.
was in a higher price market. We'll just leave it at
It
that.
was it was in a higher,
Um,
it's a nice neighborhood. Yeah, nice market. It was a $500,000 house.
right. And so this right here, this free starter kit, this has actually it has all the cold call scripts, all the acquisition scripts, all of the contracts that you need for purchase agreement, assignments, everything you need to get started. Even has like a little video in there of like breaking down like what wholesaling is, but you guys will already know most of that. Um, and then when Clint says like we've tried every tool, we have like prop wire, prop stream, batch leads, you name it. Um, but if you are on a tight budget and you want to get started, and I've actually had subscriptions for prop stream, batch leads, you name it, I canceled those and I use Deal Machine exclusively for pulling data. So Deal Machine is a tool that is 99 bucks a month. You can export thousands of records, and it does have phone numbers of those people in there. So what I'm going to actually show you right now, basically these are the three things that you need. You need the cold call script if you're going to cold call yourself, if you're not going to outsource it. All right. And what you could do until you get your first deal. If you do have a little bit of marketing budget, you could hire cold callers. Cold calling is the number one lead source for both me and Clint. I get an 8x return on cold calling. So if I spend $1, I make 8. And that's been pretty consistent since I started in this business. And I flip houses as well. So I mean, we've even gotten some six figure flips from cold calling leads. But if you're just getting started and you're like, hey, I don't have a lot of budget, this is how you can get started. And I've actually made cold calls myself, really just to test data, to test tools, do things like that. So what I'm going to show you is, as soon as Clint gives me access to share, I'm going to show you how to, how deal machine works, how to pull data, and how to start making calls so you can find your first deal. All right. So let me share my screen here. All right. All right. So this is inside Deal Machine. All right. You'll see that we have lots of, we have lots and lots and lots of lists in here. 60,000 records, that we've done various different things with. Now, when you are building a list, there's a couple things. Like, you can go really broad, like St. Louis. And I have no problem. St. Louis is my main market. That's where I do all my deals. I've tested other markets, but now we're exclusive. All right. So you could go the entire county. Problem is with that, you're going to have hundreds of thousands of records. Right. So what I recommend is going by zip code. All right. So let's go 63136. This is the zip code that I buy in. Okay. So I would start with that zip code. Now, if we pull that zip code, what it's going to do is, okay, we've got 18,000 properties in that zip code. But how do we find the ones that are maybe most likely to sell? All right. So we've got some quick filters here, and then we've got some other filters here. So I would probably go, anything that's a 2-bedroom plus. Why 2-bedroom? Because where I make a lot of money is converting 2-bedroom houses to 3-bedroom houses. And so other investors or your cash buyers are going to think the same way. If they can get a 3-bedroom house and convert it to a 4-bedroom without having to add any square footage, that's going to be a cash flow monster for them. All right. So I would go 2-bedroom plus. All right. There's a couple other filters we want to make sure. We want to make sure that it's not on market. So it's off market. So it's not currently listed. All right. So we're going to confirm that. And we want to make sure that it has not been sold recently. So last sale date is more than, and I would put years, I would say 5 years. So they've lived there 5 years or longer. All right. So that's kind of your baseline of building your list. Now that's gone down to 6,000 records. Okay. So now we've just created a criteria of kind of what our total addressable market is there. But now, how do we find the people that are most motivated? All right. A couple of things. We've got some quick filters here. All right. Expired listings. That's a good place to start. Those are people who listed their house and the house didn't sell. I personally don't love those because a lot of times those people are on another planet as far as what they think their property's worth, and that's why it didn't sell. My personal favorite, if you're trying to get your first deal, who are the easiest people to most likely sell? Absentee owner. So those are people who own the property but don't live in it, right? If you want to take that a step further, you can say they're out of state. Okay. So funny enough, this number didn't change very much. So we've now got 3,000 houses that fit our criteria that are off market where the person who owns the house does not live in the house. Okay. It's less of an emotional transition for them to sell the house. All right. Now, the other thing that you want to do is you want to make sure they have equity. All right. So if they don't have a high equity, then there's no potential for a deal, right? If they owe 90,000 on the house and the house is worth 100,000, there's no room for you to make any money. Okay. Now there's something else that we can do here. We can take it a step further and say, not only do we want people that have high equity, but we want people who own that house free and clear. Like and you'll see that the numbers here are not changing much, but now we're targeting people that own the house free and clear and live out of state and do not live in the house. All right. And then there's a couple of other things that we can do. Now, if I'm just getting started and I'm brand new, what's the easiest deal to wholesale? House that nobody lives in. Okay. And so that's what we call vacant homes. So now we've got 5,300 records where the person owns the house and they live out of state and it's vacant and they own it free and clear. So now we've built that list. We can click build this list right here. And it's going to give us all 5,300 of these people. And it's going to give us phone numbers for them as well. Right. So I'm just going to do this in real time. They also have this AI tool where it's going to scan all those properties and try to find the ones that are distressed. On vacants, don't waste your time. Like if they're vacant, they're likely distressed. Now, one disclaimer that I will say is you really got to be careful with vacant properties because sometimes those houses might be vacant for a really, really long time. And the amount of work that it would cost to fix that house is more than what the house is actually worth. Okay. So that's one disclaimer on vacants. And this is optional. You don't have to go vacant, but you could. All right. So let's just assume we want to go vacant. We're going to click build list. We're going to confirm. And oh, I have too many leads saved. So I guess we're not going to build that list today. But let's just say we built that list. Let's find a list that we have here. Okay, so here's a list that we built in Hazelwood, which is a neighboring. So we've got 1,000 records in this list. What is the criteria of this list? Um, high equity senior owner, single family, 2 bed, 1 bath, high equity senior owner. So these are senior owners in the area that we buy. All right. There's a list that we target. There's 1,000 in here. So what I could do is I can select all these and then I can literally just start calling them right here. All right. So you'll see it's got numbers. All right. It's going to start dialing. Does take a second to load up. But boom, right here. You can see it's already dialing, and I'll show you how this works. Maybe we get somebody to pick up. Who knows? So you'll get once. So I don't know. That number was disconnected, so we just go disconnected, and then we would go to the next record, and so on. Anyway, I'm not going to bore you with me sitting here dialing. It would be super cool if somebody picked up and like they were super motivated and like it would, but the likelihood is not. We only have 30 minutes, so and if you have any questions, like save them to the end. I'm gonna pass it back to Clint, but that's how. If I'm brand new, I get a Deal Machine subscription. I pay $99 a month, and we have a link. We have like a little promotion link or affiliate link, whatever that we can share with you. That's how I would build a list. Once you've selected a market, those are the filters that I would use, and I would dial directly from Deal Machine. I'm going to pass this back to Clint. If you have questions, drop them in the chat. We'll start with those first as we wrap up. Clint, you're still host, so you should have the ability to go back to the presentation.
Can you see it?
There we go. Yep, I see it now. Perfect. Yeah.
I'm not gonna go too deep into this because Colin just really kind of covered narrowing down, the various things like, right, you have pre-foreclosure tax delinquency. I will say driving for dollars, if you do happen to live in a decent market, right, drive around and just seeing if properties are distressed, right? Does it look like, the roof's caving in? Is the yard overgrown? Is it just looking really rough? So that's a good way, like a boots on the ground and, no cost other than just literally driving around. And then Facebook groups, there's tons of them for wholesaling. And so whatever market you're interested in, there's definitely groups for that. Granted, a lot of them don't know how to run numbers, so they might be asking some crazy prices. But you can eventually find some stuff in there. And then ultimately, if you have some capital or you get your first deal closed, you can go the route where Colin and I are now, paid lead sources. So cold calling, pay per lead, PPC, Facebook. I think collectively we spent over $300,000 over the past year testing all these out. And both of us right now, cold calling is our primary focus. And we don't use US cold callers that if you guys are in tech, you think you're going to have to pay somebody 80 grand a year to make, they're all lazy, right? They make 40 calls a day. we use overseas talent, 2 grand.
They're making hundreds of calls a day.
Yeah, yeah, typically 400 or 500. And so, but that's the route we go. So I'll move on. So from the script, and that's in the material. But right, it's really not too complicated. It's just, hey, saw your property on XYZ. Curious if you had any interest in selling it. Not going to go into the exact script, but what I want to highlight, the most important thing is not how much they're asking, it's what their motivation is. Because more than likely with Zillow these days, they're all going to be asking way too much, or asking like what ARV is, like as if it's been fully remodeled. And some people get so hung up on that, but motivation, it is just driving down, kind of like right in any sales. What's the pain point? What's the cost of inaction if they hold it? And if there is strong motivation, then that's where there's opportunity, and that's when it's worth building rapport, building trust. A lot of people try and wholesale, and it's a lot of people with not any business acumen, not really good sales skills, and so people just feel like they're getting lowballed, and like these guys are moving on instead of build that rapport, build that trust, and then explain the offer. Right? You don't just throw them like, you know 40 or 50 grand less. You work them back through it and say, hey, as an investor, we have this cost, that cost. And granted,
Yeah.
every situation is different. Every right, you might be dealing with somebody who's 80, so you don't want to get too complicated and confuse them. In one case, ironically, my first deal, I was dealing with a realtor that was the daughter of the older family. um it was a realtor in that city and still didn't list it, and they went through a wholesaler, and I made 55 grand on that. um so all that said, motivation is more important than anything. Then right, if it's worth your time, don't rush it. You can't have the one call closes. But yeah, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Colin, but I think it's
I
just
think that, yeah, I think the one thing I'll touch on, and I know we're coming up on time, so we'll try to wrap this up here. But uh, most people only do two, possibly three real estate transactions in their entire life. Okay. Most of them are not going to do 40 a year, 80 a year, 90 a year, like what I'm on track to do. Right. So they're not experts in this. Right. So if they just go to Zillow and say, yeah, I want 150 because this estimate says 150, you have to explain to them why it's not worth 150, right? How Zestimate works, right? And Clint and I did a role playing with this in our coaching call for the community yesterday, where it's like, there's a lot of factors in what value a home price. So it's your job to really understand all those and be able to talk to somebody after you've built that trust and rapport and they have motivation to get them to a reasonable price that makes sense. And so I think that's kind of the most important takeaway of what it looks like to talk to these sellers.
Yep. And so, yes, if you're coming up on time, the contract, very simple, 3-page agreement. Um, the main thing in the contract of like what covers your butt is the inspection period. So once you get it under contract, so typically, right, I have 30-day inspection period. Let's say I have it locked up for 30 days and I have somebody go walk the property. Right. And these are all in cities I've never lived in. So there's tons of resources out there for $100, $200. Somebody will walk the property, take pictures, put a lockbox on it. And right, say you get those pictures back and their version of it doesn't need any work, is they obviously must be blind, because the place is absolutely trashed. And so that gives you the ability to then either go back and try and renegotiate and get it lower, or completely back out of the deal. And so that's like the key piece, is that inspection period allows you to not be obligated to close on the property. So that said, like I said right here, lock it up fast, don't overthink it. Don't get what I will say is it can be very intimidating in the beginning. Um, this all kinds of stuff comes up, and that's where like me working with Colin was key, having even like some stuff that happened earlier this week in the deal. touching base with them, and we're having it in our community. People are coming to us. Right? You have Google, Chat GPT, that obviously helps. But yeah, ultimately get it locked up, even if you think it's close. And then once somebody walks it, as long as you keep that inspection period in there, which is we provide that in all the contracts as a default, your butt's covered, as long as you stay on top of it. And how much? How to find cash buyers. What I did personally in the beginning was I partnered with Colin to sell my deals. Um, Mastering acquisitions first is key. Like I literally just talked to someone in our community who's already trying to find buyers and he doesn't have anything locked up yet. I'm like, dude, that's time you could be spent getting a deal. If you get a deal for the right price, you'll be able to sell it. Now, how can you do it? Facebook groups are free, and there is a million of them out there around wholesaling, people looking for off-market deals. I know locally here in my market, even though I don't do anything here locally, I've been to some local meetups, public records from county sites, and then ultimately, we have like PropStream, various platforms out there where you can skip trace and then start cold calling cash buyers. Um, but what I would say is just focus on mastering acquisitions, running comps, and getting a deal locked up. And then there's tons of people like me, Colin, or in those Facebook groups um, that can help you move those first deals if needed. And yeah, so once you get it under contract and get an offer, you just use an assignment contract, fill it out, get it over to the title company, and then they handle everything, the transaction with the buyer. I mean, it's awesome once it's done. Like I know here in, I can't remember, I think like next Friday, I should have about a $17,700 wire hit outside of anything crazy happening. So, and again, I never even put up a dollar. I paid $100. I listed this on the MLS. That's a route you can do also. Is I paid $100 flat fee, listed on the MLS, and other than that, like I didn't put up any money for escrow or anything else. I'm trying to kind of go through this. Common mistakes. Just paying too much. A lot of the gurus you see out there on the platforms will brag about their students locking up all this stuff. Locking up contracts is not hard if you're offering too much. Like I've even listened to calls of some of these gurus and they're locking them up at what people are asking. And it's like, that's easy. I could lock up fucking 20 houses a day if I'm going to do that. The idea is lock it up at the right price so you can actually move it. Now this says not having the buyer lined up. Once you get it under contract, like it is like that's actually when the deal starts. Many people think this starts like once you get one under contract, that's the end. The reality is that is a start line. And you now have typically a 30-day deadline. And so it is, you get it to the title company, make sure there's no issues. And from there, if you're going to sell it yourself, start hustling, getting in these groups, start calling. If you're going to partner with somebody, make sure it's somebody who knows what they're doing, right? Not another newbie who has no buyer pool or no resources. Um, so definitely get going. The other big mistake, and I see this, and even with the people in our community stuck in analysis paralysis, people confuse over consume. You got to consume some education. But I even like today, somebody's like, now they're looking at land and now they're doing this, and this guy told them that. Um, just pick up the damn phone, start making calls, start making offers, and quit making excuses. And it's going to take reps, but you're going to learn. You're going to get better and quicker at running your numbers. Uh, so yeah, at a certain point, you got to get off the sidelines and give it a shot. Last piece, and this is anybody who's in sales talking too much on the call. Um, I mean, I think that's pretty straightforward. I think a lot of people on here are in sales and probably know that. So the tools we mentioned right in the beginning, you can use Google Sheets. RE Simply is our CRM of choice. Colin already showed you all Deal Machine, and then obviously we'll have the assignment contract. Little sales pitch here. So we do have our community. We're doing daily breakdowns, sharing deals in there, weekly calls. Right. We get a lot of DMs in there. Where we're just kind of helping people, you know, kind of figure things out. And so we do have today anyone that wants to join, we'll throw in 20-minute coaching call just to help identify market, answer key questions to get started, and then give a list of 1,000 leads to start with that you can start cold calling. Um, the community is dirt cheap, in my opinion. It's 200 a month. I was in a community that was 2,000 a month at one point and didn't provide a fraction of this. So inside of the community is step by step, A to Z, wholesaling, fix and flip, Burr method, all the tools we use, scripts, contracts. Literally nothing is gatekept once it's in there.
Yeah, and I can show you really quick, guys, while we open it up for questions. Um, it's 200 a month. You can cancel anytime. And frankly, if you don't see the value after 7 days, we'll give you your money back. But we do also do weekly group calls. We're answering questions and DMs. Um, inside here, you're going to get how to pick a market, how to pick your strategy, everything on wholesaling real estate, flipping virtually, Section 8 rentals, the Bird method, acquisitions, marketing, how to use agent outreach, all the tools that we use, how to build a team, scripts, contracts, SOPs, dispositions, selling your deals, all the KPIs that you should track, all the coaching calls that we do weekly are in here. Any of these webinars that we do, we post in here as well. So this is everything under the hood that you get. Like I said, it's 200 a month. And if you don't feel like it's worth it after 7 days, we'll give you your money back. But with that, appreciate everybody that showed up today. We got some questions, I think, in the chat. We can start with those. And then feel free to come on camera or drop your questions in the chat and we'll get to all of them. I know we went a little bit over. We did have a lot to cover. But let's see here. You want to start with the questions in the chat, Clint?
What do we have here? Okay, it looks like they were asking about your deal. Yeah, bought it. Is someone coming on? Yeah, bought it.
I think the question on the deal that we showed was, did we sell it for 38K? No. So the house was worth 100 grand. So the person who bought it for 38, fixed it up, and then sold it for 100 grand. I think they might have kept it as a rental, but once they repaired it, the house was worth 100 grand after the fact. So I had it under contract for 14, assigned it to the buyer for 38, and then they had a property that once they did the rehab was going to be worth $100,000. Just to kind of break that down. Any other questions? What else do we have in the chat?
See. Do you also teach how to
38.
find inspectors? Um, yeah,
Yeah,
on
I mean, building your boots on the ground team is essential. Um, Inspectors are like less important unless you're going to be buying the property. So if you're going to be flipping it or turning it into a rental, then you do want to have some good inspectors or contractors or both. But if you're just wholesaling it, like I personally wouldn't waste the money on an inspection report. It's like let your buyers do their own due diligence in order to make a decision on whether they want to buy the property or not.
yeah. And then I saw that you said you live in Cali, can't be in Missouri. Like, so it doesn't, Colin lives in California.
Yeah, for Jay, I live in California. I own over 30 rentals in St. Louis. Currently have 8 rehabs going on right now. Some of those will keep as rentals, some of those will flip. I have never once been to Missouri. I've never once stepped foot in any of the houses that we flipped or own. And Clint has wholesale deals in many different markets and never once been to any of those locations. So you're doing all of this virtually. Um,
And the
how do
question
you
on
know
how,
how much to sell it for? Oh, that's a good question. Um, it kind of depends, right? So you got to see like how does it pencil for your cash buyer? You can always have an asking price. I say a good rule of thumb is if you're somewhere between like let's call it 10 to 15% of the ARV as your assignment fee, that's a pretty good spot to be, right? So if you have like a $500,000 house that's going to be worth 500,000 once it's fixed up. 50,000 is a good assignment fee for something like that. If you have a $200,000 house, $20,000 assignment fee is a pretty good assignment fee. And you do all that underwriting when you create your offer. So we have calculators and stuff like that where you can plug in what the ARV is of the house once you've ran your comps. You can put your ARV in there, and then Clint actually has built like a really good rehab calculator. So if you know it needs kitchen, bath, windows, paint, floors, it'll calculate what those repairs and then give you a little buffer. You plug that in, and then you put your assignment fee. You decide how much you want to make. Like, hey, this is my first deal. Like, I just want to make 10 grand. What I always suggest is try to underwrite it with a little bit more than what you actually want to make. Like if you want to make 10, maybe you underwrite the deal for like 15 or even 20, just to give yourself a little cushion because sometimes your offers are going to come in lower than what you have it marketed for. And at least then you end up making 10 rather than if you underwrote for 10 and then you only end up making five or three. I've made that mistake before. So you underwrite it, and then it's gonna spit out what your maximum offer is that you can give to the seller, and that's how that works. Good question, JK. Um, seems like everybody's still hanging out. So any other questions? Feel free to hop on camera, drop them in the chat, whatever's easiest for you.
Hey, Colin, I'll jump in real quick.
Yeah,
So bought a couple houses, just like primary residence. Um, so kind of familiar with like contract timeline from, signing
yeah,
to closing and all that. How does that
yeah.
affect that assignment period and finding a buyer? Once you go under contract, how much time do you typically have?
Yeah, so it depends on the terms of your contract, right? So if let's say you have buyers already, like I do, I can put it under contract for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, right? I would say the standard is 30 days. So 30 days gives you enough time to get it under contract, get it to the title company, make sure you have a clean title, get pictures, potentially set it up on Lockbox, start marketing it to your buyers. Now, good cash buyers can typically close in like 7 days. All right. So most of your buyers are going to buy either cash or with hard money, and they should be able to close in like 7 days, maybe 10 days at the most. But 30 days gives you time, like I said, to get it to title, make sure you have clean title, get pictures and lockbox set up, start marketing it, start getting offers, all right, and then give them that 7 to 10 days to close. That's kind of if everything goes perfectly. Now, let's just say, for example, like you get under contract and then the lady takes a week to let you get in there to actually get pictures. So she's like, oh, I can't find the key. My sister's brother's cousin has it, whatever. Like those things happen. Um, we have something called an addendum. And so you can always just move the closing date. Or if it's coming up to the closing date and like you haven't sold it yet, you can always say, hey, we're close. We're still marketing it. Like I just need another week. And so you can extend that close of escrow date. You just got to get the paperwork signed and send it to escrow. Um, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that sounds familiar. And yeah, I don't think I had any follow-ups to that. That sounds good.
Okay, cool. And I just dropped the deck inside of the chat for everybody who stuck around. So,
Cool.
um, if you're just here for the webinar, totally cool. If you do end up using any of these tools that we mentioned, we do have some affiliate links on there, so we make a couple bucks. Um, if you're interested in joining the community, I can drop that link as well for everybody. And like I said, if anybody who joins that was on the webinar, We are going to give you that free coaching call on 1,000 leads with phone numbers in any market that you choose. There's a link to the community and then also the Google slide deck as well. But we'll hang out for, so you got another like 5-10 minutes if you want to hang out and answer any more questions.
Yeah, I'm good. I got time.
Okay, perfect. Fire away. We got like 5-10 more minutes here that we can stick around and answer any questions you have.
Yeah, and we're open to like any question too. So like even if it's, want to challenge anything we're saying, like happy to answer everything.
Yep.
Where's the biggest risk?
In wholesaling
Yeah.
specifically, the biggest risk would be, it's a good question.
I know,
I
I
mean,
know. I would answer that.
yeah, go ahead.
So for me, because I actually spend, money on cold callers and marketing, it's my time and money. Because as far as how the deals are with the contract, right, as long as I'm staying on top of it, there's not really like I've had tons of stuff go sideways, and the consequence was just the time and money I put into it. Um, that's really all I've experienced. I mean, and you got to like, double check, right, your contracts, and then, right, I've dealt with lawyers. Somebody has a lawyer on the other end. Um, so as long as you're reading everything and right, granted, I run a lot of stuff by Colin, who's 18 months ahead of me. But that's what I would say, Colin. I don't know what you think.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is the biggest risk, right? And I mean, the biggest risk is really your time and money. And like I've had deals where we locked up the deal on the very first call, right? But that was a 45-minute call. Um, and then we had the deal assigned within the first 3 hours, and we were supposed to make $30,000. And then it was like, dude, we didn't put a lot of time into that deal, but you are expecting that $30,000. And then literally the day before closing, the husband and wife were getting divorced, which I knew. But the judge in their divorce awarded the wife the house that was the husband's house before they got married, and he was the only one on title. And so we were planning on a $30,000 payday, and then we got nothing. So those types of scenarios happen. Luckily, that one we didn't put a lot of time into because it was just a phenomenal deal. But there's ones where like you might work the lead for 6 months and then you get it under contract and then you find a buyer and then you find out that there's issues with title and you can't even sell the property. So I like to open title right away. Some people will wait to open title till they get a buyer. I like to open title with the title company right away. And it's good to build relationships with title companies that you'll use over and over again because I want to get ahead of that stuff and know, like, before we put a lot of effort into selling the deal, that that we can actually sell it. Another question. Could you walk us through an example property you'd look at? Example, what would you like about it? What would you offer the owner? What would you think the ARV would be? And how you would get those numbers? That's a great question. But that's probably going to take more than like 5 minutes. I can walk you through what I can walk you through is like, I can um, what I can is this is one of the calculators that we use. So I'll walk you through this really quick, but um, like I'm just going to give you some hypotheticals. So I mean, here's a deal that I was looking at today. I don't even remember what deal this was, but the ARV was 150,000. The estimated repairs were 10,000. The way that we can estimate the repairs is we would use this calculator. So if it's 1,000 square foot house, let's say that it just needs paint, floors, maybe it doesn't need a roof and it doesn't need anything else, right? Then you have $11,000 rehab. All right. So we would change that to 11. Um, we have some, different ways. What happened here? We have some different ways of going about um, comping. Okay, so finding the properties to figure out what the ARV is. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go into that today. Maybe that's another webinar. Um, and then we have this 75% exit. So if we go right here, we can see like this is if the house is, these are sort of the exit percentage. So the cheaper the house, the lower we need to be, because that's how where cash buyers are going to underwrite their numbers. Okay, so like on this house, we're at 75%. The house is worth 150 once it's fixed up. It only needs 11K in work, and we want to make 15,000 in an assignment. So we need to get that house under contract for nothing more than 86,500 is what we would need to pay. Now, Clint, anything else you would add? The other thing that I'll add is like this is innovation. This is a little bit more of a complex strategy. Basically, you're wholesaling real estate, but you're listing it on the MLS. And so we have another contract for that, which is a 6-page agreement, gives you the rights to market on the property on the MLS. There are different strategies of doing that between using a flat fee broker, using an agent that you have a relationship for a flat fee. But that does allow you to offer a little bit more. So you would basically, in this scenario, you would be listing the house for 140, right? To make, well, this is a little bit high. So on this, we might be, let's just say for 20,000. So you could offer 110, right? And then you'd make like $22,000 listing it if you went this route. The
Yeah.
drawback of this way is it takes longer. It's going to take you 60 to 90 days, where this you can get done in 30 days or less.
Yeah. And I would add like what you're asking for. So like in the community, like it's detailed breakdown on like how do you come up with repairs and the calculator, how do you run ARV, how do you run I mean, because the question you're asking is, right, if I ran through how quick I can do it now, you're not going to pick up anything. But that's kind of the whole purpose of the community is like we have step by step, very detailed on how to do that. And it's something that like with repetition, like in the beginning, it's going to take you like 20 minutes to do it on your first house, but then you just do more and more. And when you've done, after you do hundreds of them, it's pretty easy.
Yep. Good question though. Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you. All right. If nobody else has any more questions, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Make sure you save the link for the community, save the link for the deck, which has those resources. At the very least, if you're like, hey, I'm interested in this, like joining the community is super helpful. Like worst case scenario, go sign up for Deal Machine and give it a shot. But if you need a little help, the community is a great place to get that support and get get questions answered as they come up once you go down this path. All right, thanks everyone. Appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up, and we do have another webinar next week where we are going to talk about. I'll drop that link in here as well, just real quick. This one. We're going to talk about how you can BRRRR properties and get your first cash flowing Section 8 rental in 90 days. So anybody who's interested in that, you can sign up here for that as well. All right. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.